I have to be honest with you, I've been staring at this stack of documents for the last hour, and well, it's genuinely unsettling.
Yeah, it really is a heavy one.
Usually when we pull up these old archival cases, especially, from the 1800s, they feel kind of distant, like they're sepia-toned.
Right, they feel disconnected from our modern reality.
Exactly. But this one, the manipulation involved here feels so modern, it's actually making my skin crawl.
It's the calculation, isn't it?
Oh,
I felt the exact same thing reading the original coroner's inquest transcripts.
yeah, the calculation is just wild.
Because we're used to crimes of passion or robberies gone wrong. But what we're looking at today, this incident from San Francisco in 1872, is something else entirely. It's an attempt to murder someone and then immediately murder their reputation.
That is exactly it. So for everyone listening, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at Independence Day, July 4th, 1872.
In the Mission District.
Right. And outside, the city is going completely wild. There's fireworks, parades, total celebration. But our sources, the San Francisco Chronicle, the Daily Alta California, all these archival clippings, they focus on this one specific house at 3330 24th Street.
And if you walked by it that day, you'd think it was just a perfectly normal, successful home.
Yeah, the reports call it a, quote, handsome, orderly cottage.
Which is such a crucial detail. This wasn't some rundown flophouse. This was the home of Nicholas E. Carr. He was a very successful, very fastidious 59-year-old tailor.
And he lived there with his wife and Carr.
Right. And the police reports, they make a really big deal out of how competent the house looked. Expensive new carpets, fresh paint, brand new furniture. Everything was perfectly in its place.
Except obviously for what was happening in the back bedroom.
Yeah.
Because when the police finally broke in on the morning of July 5th, that perfect order just completely shattered.
Completely. Officer Martin Fennell and Dr. Coleman enter the premises, and the visual whiplash is intense. You have this handsome front parlor, and then you have the back room, where they find Ann Carr dead.
And the scene is just gruesome.
It is. But what sticks with me isn't even the body initially. It's Nicholas Carr himself.
See, this is the part that really got me. You'd expect a husband in that situation to be frantic or sobbing or maybe even unconscious.
Or trying to run away.
Exactly. But the police report describes him as cool and collected.
Cool and collected. Chilling, right? He's sitting in the front room wearing a bloody undershirt. He has stabbed himself multiple times in the chest, and he swallowed a massive dose of laudanum.
Which is a heavy opiate, right?
Yeah, a very strong liquid opiate. So he fully expects to be dead within the hour. And yet, when the officer asks him, "Where is your wife?" he doesn't hesitate.
He just points and says, "She is in the other room dead. I killed her."
As a matter of fact.
It's like he's reporting a broken window. And he did it with the tools of his trade. He didn't use a gun or a kitchen knife.
No, he took a pair of heavy tailor's shears, the kind you use to cut through thick wool or canvas. He separated the blades and basically used one half as a dagger.
That image is incredibly visceral. It implies a kind of frantic improvisation, but at the same time, the autopsy suggests something very precise.
Yeah, Dr. Edwin Bentley's report.
Right. And by the way, the medical language back then was surprisingly detailed. He notes 23 separate stab wounds.
It's a grueling read. Most of them were superficial scratches on her arms, her hand.
Defensive wounds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That tells us Anne fought. This was a protracted struggle, to use the doctor's words. She was fighting for her life. But then there's the final blow. One strike between the fourth and fifth ribs, straight into the left ventricle.
That's a tailor's precision right there. He knew exactly where to strike to end it.
He did.
But here is where the mission of our deep dive really kicks in. Because if this was just a horrific murder-suicide, the paperwork would be pretty thin, just a tragic newspaper blur.
Right.
But Nicholas Carr didn't die immediately. He lingered. And because he lingered, he tried to do something I have never seen in a historical case like this.
You're talking about the anti-mortem statement.
Exactly. He's bleeding out, he's heavily drugged on laudanum, and he demands to see his lawyer, W.C. Barnett.
And he brings the press in, too.
Right. Now, usually a deathbed statement is for confessing sins. You want to clear your conscience before you meet your maker.
That's the cultural expectation. And it actually carries significant legal weight. In the law, there's a concept that a dying declaration is admissible as truth because, theoretically, no one wants to die with a lie on their lips.
Right.
Yeah.
Nicholas Carr knew that. He knew that if he gave a statement while he believed he was dying, it would become the permanent historical record of why he did what he did.
But he doesn't confess. I mean, he admits the killing, but he frames it as almost a public service. He spends his final breaths absolutely shredding his wife's character.
It really is a masterclass in victim blaming.
I made a list of the things he accused her of. It is a literal laundry list of 19th century deal breakers.
He claims she deceived him about her past. He said she had venereal disease scars and that she had a secret living husband somewhere else.
Which would invalidate their marriage.
Exactly. But the big one, the one he keeps coming back to again and again, is that she was habitually intemperate.
Which is the polite Victorian way of saying she was a raging alcoholic.
Right. He paints this picture of a wild woman. He claims she would disappear on drinking binges for weeks at a time, come back violent, destroy property.
He's positioning himself as the long-suffering, respectable businessman who is just trying to manage a chaotic, dangerous wife.
He even brings up a carpet.
I laughed out loud at this, even though it's incredibly tragic. He is literally dying, bleeding from the chest, and he takes the time to complain to his lawyer that she ruined a $25 carpet because he wouldn't buy her a matching furniture set.
It sounds petty to us today, but think about what he's doing strategically. He's building a legal defense for a trial he thinks he won't even be alive to attend.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He's trying to prove she was financially reckless and completely unstable. And he had actually already started this campaign before the murder. Did you see the newspaper clipping from July 2nd?
The personal notice, yeah, I have it right here in the stack. 2 days before the murder, he puts this ad in the San Francisco Call. It says, quote, "All persons are hereby cautioned against trusting my wife, Ann Carr, as I will not be responsible for any debts contracted by her."
That is the nuclear option.
Yeah, in 1872, a woman's financial existence was entirely tied to her husband.
Completely. By publishing that, he wasn't just cutting off her credit card. He was publicly humiliating her in front of the entire city. He was signaling to every shopkeeper, every neighbor, that she was bad news.
So he humiliates her on the 2nd. Then on the 4th, the murder happens. And in his dying statement, he claims self-defense.
He says she came at him first with a carving knife, then a hatchet.
And he just grabbed the shears in a, quote, moment of frenzy.
Frenzy. That's a very specific legal buzzword for the time. He's trying to thread a needle here. He's saying, I didn't plan it, I just snapped because she was so incredibly dangerous.
So if he dies, that statement stands as his legacy.
And if he lives, that statement is his prepackaged defense strategy. He wants to go down in history as the victim of a wild woman, not a wife-beater.
And honestly, if we only looked at his statement, we might actually believe him. The narrative is so tight.
It is.
But we have to talk about the catalyst for all of this, because it wasn't just Nicholas and Anne living in that house. There was a third person.
Lizzie hated.
The 16-year-old apprentice. And we really need to pause on that word, apprentice.
Yes, because in 1872, Lizzie wasn't just a high school intern helping out after school. She was an indentured servant.
She was taken from the Protestant Orphan Asylum at age 13, right?
Correct. Under the indenture system, Nicholas Carr legally practically owned her labor until she turned 18. She was unpaid labor, learning a trade.
That dynamic is so toxic. You have a 59-year-old man, a 16-year-old girl who has absolutely no parents and no power, and then the wife, Anne.
And the sources say Anne felt completely replaced by this girl. She accused Nicholas of caring more for Lizzie, even calling her his concubine.
Whether there was actual sexual infidelity happening or not, the emotional displacement Anne felt was incredibly real.
Anne told people she felt like a stranger in her own home. She said she had to humor Lizzie in everything just to get Nicholas to smile at her.
Imagine that humiliation. You're the wife, but you're walking on eggshells around the teenage indentured servant, because your husband clearly prefers her company to yours.
And that's exactly what sparked the final fight on July 4th.
It was over a vest, right?
A vest, yeah. Lizzie made a mistake on a work order for a vest. Anne exploded, probably releasing years of pent-up jealousy and frustration. There was a physical struggle. Lizzie got cut on the arm, maybe by accident during the scuffle, maybe not.
But look at Nicholas's reaction to this. He doesn't step in to de-escalate. He sends Lizzie away. He tells her to go to her legal guardian.
Which leaves him entirely alone with Anne for the final confrontation.
And this is where the whole wild woman narrative he built up starts to fall completely apart for me. Because once the police start interviewing the neighbors, the people who actually saw this couple every single day, the story flips 180 degrees.
This is the real power of the coroner's inquest transcripts. It gives a voice to the exact people Nicholas tried to silence with his press release.
You have the butcher, Charles Seipel, and the grocer, Christopher Rawl. These tradesmen saw Anne daily.
Rawl actually saw her at 10 in the morning on the day of the murder.
Right, and remember, Nicholas claimed she had been on a week-long drinking bender?
Exactly. But Rawl testifies under oath that she was stone-cold sober. He called her agreeable and ladylike.
Sapel the butcher said the exact same thing. They testified they never saw her intoxicated. Not once.
So instantly that habitual drunkard defense starts to crumble under scrutiny.
But the real gut punch, the absolute turning point in these documents, comes from the next-door neighbor, Mary McKee.
She was Anne's closest friend.
And what she describes isn't a woman terrorizing her husband. It's a woman living in absolute abject terror.
Mary's testimony is just heartbreaking to read. She reveals that the night before the murder, July 3rd, Anne actually fled to the McKee's house next door.
She showed Mary her limbs, and they were covered in bruises.
Badly bruised limbs,
Mm-hmm.
and she explicitly told Mary, "He is going to kill me."
There's one detail Mary McKee gives that I almost dismissed as erratic behavior when I first read it, but then I realized what it actually meant, and it is haunting. The doorknobs?
The screwdriver and the doorknobs.
Yes, because Nicholas used this specific detail as proof that Anne was crazy. He told the police, look, she went nuts and unscrewed all the latches and knobs from the doors inside the house. She's destroying the property.
And at first glance, out of context, that does sound like mania.
But then Mary explains why. Anne told her that Nicholas had a habit of locking her in the bedroom to beat her.
She didn't remove the knobs to destroy the house. She removed them so she couldn't be locked in.
She was dismantling the locks with a screwdriver to create an escape route.
It's a desperate, tactical survival attempt. She was modifying her environment just to stay alive.
That shifts the perspective so violently. What Nicholas presented as madness was pure survival.
It completely exposes him. His cool and collected demeanor isn't patience. It's the lack of empathy of a predator.
And her wildness was just reactive abuse. She was a trapped animal fighting back against a sustained campaign of domestic terror.
So we have a clear pattern of abuse in this house. But here is where our research really blew the whole case wide open. Because this wasn't Nicholas Carr's first homicide.
No, it wasn't. And this is a detail that wasn't in the main San Francisco papers at the time. If you go back 16 years to 1856, Nicholas Carr was living in a mining camp called Monte de Oro up near Oroville.
Right.
And he kills his mining partner.
He does, a man named Thomas Hant. They got into an argument. And it wasn't about gold or a claim. It was about hay.
Hay for a horse.
Yes. Hank wouldn't let him have some hay. So Nicholas Carr waits in the dark, steps out with a shotgun, and blasts Hank in the chest.
Which sounds like straight-up premeditated murder.
It absolutely does. He was indicted for it. But, and here is the echo that should send shivers down your spine, he claimed self-defense.
He used the exact same defense.
He said Hank attacked him first. He played the respectable citizen defending himself card, and the jury bought it entirely. They acquitted him in less than 30 minutes.
He got away with it. He learned early on that if you completely control the narrative, you can literally get away with murder.
Precisely. But there's a tragic irony here that is almost too painful to read. Do you know who funded his defense in 1856? Do you know who paid for the high-powered lawyers that got him off?
It was Anne, wasn't it?
It was Anne. She wasn't his wife yet, but they were together. She spent every single dollar she had to her name. Mary McKee testified that Anne told her she slept in a neighbor's barn during that entire trial because she had sold everything just to save Nicholas from the gallows.
That is devastating. The woman who saved his life and kept him out of prison in 1856 becomes his victim in 1872.
And he uses the exact same playbook to try and justify killing her.
It's the ultimate betrayal. He took her money, he took her life, and then he tried to take her reputation on his way out.
And he almost succeeded.
So he's lying in the hospital, thinking he's pulled it off again. He's got his self-defense story planted in the legal record. He's destroyed her name in the newspapers.
But he does eventually die.
Right. He doesn't recover from the self-inflicted wounds.
No, he lingers until August 15th. Infection sets in pyemia, which is blood poisoning. But before he dies, he makes one last calculated move to erase Anne. The will.
Let me guess. He leaves it all to Lizzie Haley.
Every penny. The house, the lot, the cash. He dictates a will, leaving his entire estate to the 16-year-old indentured apprentice.
The girl Anne feared was replacing her, effectively did replace her in the end.
Legally and financially, yes. Lizzie inherited the estate.
But that feels like such a massive miscarriage of justice. Did Lizzie actually keep the house?
She did, for a few years. It's actually fascinating. She survived all this trauma at such a young age. She contested some legal challenges from Nicholas's distant relatives who wanted the money. She kept the property, and she eventually sold it in 1875 for $3,000.
Which was a small fortune back
A
then.
huge sum. It set her up for life. She married, had kids, and lived all the way until 1939.
Meanwhile, Anne is in an unmarked grave, remembered by history, at least initially, as the drunken, wild wife.
And that brings us back to the start of our deep dive. The house at 3330 24th Street is still standing. You can walk past it in San Francisco today. It's a silent witness to all of this.
But the only reason we know the truth about Anne, the only reason we know she wasn't a wild woman but a victim of domestic terror, is because those neighbors spoke up.
It really makes you wonder. Nicholas Carr almost controlled the narrative from beyond the grave. If Mayor McKee had been too scared to testify, and the records actually show she was terrified Nicholas might survive and come after her next, we would have accepted his version as historical fact.
It changes how I look at these old newspaper clippings. You realize you might literally be reading the villain's press release.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to always question who is holding the pen, or, in this case, the shears.
Before we wrap up, looking at all these sources, it really makes you wonder about the broader system at play here.
How do you mean?
Well, we talked a lot about Nicholas's narrative control, but what about the legal and social structure that made that control possible? In 1872, a man's home really was his castle, legally speaking. The police rarely intervened in domestic matters because the law essentially viewed a wife as an extension of the husband's property.
That is a really unsettling point. The system wasn't just blind to the abuse. By treating women as financial dependents without credit or power, it actively structurally protected the abuser.
Exactly. Nicholas felt comfortable putting that notice in the paper because society agreed with him he owned the money, therefore he owned her reputation. It makes you wonder how many other orderly cottages hid similar horrors just because the legal framework of the time basically put a do not enter sign on the front door for anything happening to a woman inside.
That's a heavy thought to leave on, but a completely necessary one when we study history.
Something for you all to mull over as you go about your day. Well, on that somber note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. It's a dark story, but I'm really glad we could look at the sources and help set the record straight for Anne Carr.
Me too. Thanks for joining us to look through the archives.
We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.